So the first thing we're going to do today with standard form is we're going to need to find out what is A, what is B, what is C. That's the first thing we're going to need to do. They're going to ask us to find a couple things. One of them is called axis of symmetry. You guys have done that before. The line that splits it, axis of symmetry. Okay. Vertex, we've done that before. Y-intercept, we've done that before. The only difference with today is they're not going to give us a picture. We have to create the picture. It's called a graph. Okay. So yesterday and the day before, they gave us pictures and we just labeled, right? Today, it's a little bit more in depth because they don't give us a picture. We have to create it. Okay. All right. So let's see. So let's look at example number 1. A, B, C, D is what we got to do. First thing we're going to do with standard form, first thing we always do is find out what is A, what is B, and what is C. Okay. So what's in the A place here? Okay, so A is red, x squared is black. I'm looking for the red part. So yeah, so what's in front of a letter? If there's nothing there, it's always a 1. That's the part I'm looking for. The coefficient, we call it, the number in front. B is a little easier to tell. It's positive 2. C is always by itself, negative 2. That's the first thing. Once you do that, then we can do everything else. The next thing is we have to find that line, that green line that mirrors. It's called the axis of symmetry. Okay. How do we do it? We use this little formula here. -1 times B on top, 2 times A on the bottom of the fraction. Okay, so let's set this up. -1 times A. Or sorry, -1 times B. So what did we say B was? Positive 2. On the bottom of the fraction, it's 2 times A. What did we say A was? Positive 1. Simplify. The top, we multiply. -1 times 2 is -2. The bottom is positive 2 times 1, positive 2. What does that simplify to be? -1. Oops. So that means the axis of symmetry is at x equals -1. That's where my green line is going to go. I'm going to draw it right now. So -1, it's a vertical line. So it's going to pass through x equals -1. Which is right here. Okay, that's the first thing, or second thing, sorry. The second thing. After A, B, C, we got to figure out axis of symmetry. That's done. Next thing is the vertex. The vertex is always going to is a dot. The vertex is a dot. It's always going to be on that green line. I just don't know if it's on the bottom, in the middle, up here. I don't know where it's at. So I got to figure out where that dot is. Okay? Luckily, I already have half of the vertex. The vertex is going to be on that green line. So if it's on that green line, that means it's got to be a part of it. It is part of it. It's the first part of it. So -1. What I got to figure out is the other part, the y.
Will it always be like that? Like your x will always...
Yes. Yeah, always, yeah. So will the vertex always have the axis of symmetry first? Always, yeah. Always, always, always. Absolutely. So we need to figure out the y. How do we do that? Well, we're going to plug it back in to the original guy. Instead of x, I'm going to write -1 because I know that's what the axis of symmetry is. So I put parentheses on yours those are in the place of x's. So I'm going to put a -1 here and a -1 here. I replaced them with x's. I substituted x's. Instead of x's, I put -1. Okay, so let's do some math. What is -1 squared? What's -1 times itself? +1, right? Yeah, just regular old 1. What's +2 times -1? -2 minus the 2 at the end. So when we do that math, we get -3. Yeah, -3. That guy goes here. So now I can go make a dot. At -1, -3, I'm going to go make my vertex. That's where my vertex is. -1 at -3. Left 1, down 3. Red dot. I don't know which way it's going, right? I have two options. I have arrows up and arrows down. I still don't know which way it's going to go. So I have to do my y-intercept. That's why I do y-intercept next. So y-intercept always starts with 0 in front. X0 is always the first number for a y-intercept. So the y-intercept is going to be 0, something. Well, how do I figure out the y? Well, we just did that. How did I figure out the y for vertex? I plugged it in. How do I figure out the y for here? I plug it in. But instead of -1, I'm going to plug in 0. So 0 squared is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. Minus 2, -2. I'm going to go make a dot there. So this is 1/2 of my parabola. That's 1/2 of my parabola. I know it's going to be arrows up, and that's 1/2 of it. Now the green line, it's axis of what? Symmetry. What does symmetry mean? Symmetrical. It's the same on both sides. It's like looking in a mirror, right? If I'm looking in a regular mirror and I'm 5 feet away from the mirror, my image in the mirror has to be 5 feet away, right? Unless it's a crazy mirror, it's going to be the same, right? So it's the same thing. So if I have a blue dot right here, don't I have to have a blue dot on the other side, the same spot? Because it's a mirror. So I'm going to make another dot right here. And you're done. And you are done.
So for y-intercept, will you always plug in 0?
Yep, always plug in 0 for x. No matter what. No matter this chapter, next chapter, every chapter. Yeah, every time you want to find a y-intercept, just plug in 0 for x and you'll get it.
It's 5 dots to create a parabola?
You can do another dot. So if you want to do 2 more dots, you could. How would I do that? I would just make a table. And you could create 2 more. Like I have 3 dots, right? I have what do I have? I have -1, -3. I have 0, -2, and then I have -2, -2. So if you wanted to do 2 more dots, you could. You would just plug it in for x. I don't need it. I don't require it. So you don't have to do it for me. But if you could, you would. One more question. They didn't ask this, but they're going to ask it. Not on this, but they're going to ask it later. Does this guy have a maximum or minimum? Minimum, right? Good. So let's write that down. Minimum Where is that at? So yeah, most people say the dot, -1, -3. That's actually half credit answer. What is the full credit answer? Just negative, what is it at -3? Just -3. Just -3. Because if I say -1, -3, that's the vertex. Minimum means where's the low point? Where's the lowest point on the graph? -3, right? I don't go below -3. Okay. That's it. So we got two more. We're going to do two more together. Okay. Because that's what I'm going to ask you to do on a quiz, on a test, on an assignment, practice assignment. I'm going to ask you to do those things. Can you find axis of symmetry? Can you find the vertex? Can you find the y-intercept? Is it arrows up or arrows down? What's the minimum? What's the maximum? Those are the questions I'm going to ask you. Okay? All right, so example number 2 now. ABC. What is A? -1. Good. -1 is A. B is -2, and C is +3. Good. Once I do that, I can do the rest. Okay, so now -1 times B over 2 times A. So -1 times B. B is -2. So I'm going to multiply this times -2, and I get +2 on top, right? A is -1. 2 times -1? -2. What is 2 divided by -2? -1. Now, I know the last one was also -1. That's just a coincidence. They won't always be at -1. The axis of symmetry will not always be at -1. That's just a coincidence here. Okay. So let me go make my green line at -1. Okay. Somewhere on that green line is going to be the vertex. Somewhere on that green line. I just don't know where. So that means this guy has to go here. Since it says x equals, that means it's going to be right there. Now I got to figure out what the y is. So I'm going to plug in -1 for x. Be careful here. This is where I see a lot of mistakes. A was -1, right? So what I see a lot of people do is multiply. Oh, -1 times -1 makes +1, and then square it. That's not how we do it. PEMDAS says I got to do exponents first. Or GEMS, PEMDAS or GEMS, however you learned. So I got to do exponents first. So what is -1 squared? -1 times itself. Times -1 in the front? -1. If you're not sure, ask the calculator. Tomorrow you'll be able to use the Desmos, or I use the Desmos calculator, or you can use the Delta Math calculator. It's the same thing. If you ask your calculator, it'll tell you. Watch. -1 parentheses, -1 parentheses squared. You can literally do that on the calculator. Okay. Okay. And then -1 or -2 times -1 is +2 plus 3. So what do we get? +4? That's going to go here. That's where my dot's going to go. That's where my red dot's going to go. Left 1, up 4. Again, I still don't know if arrow's up or arrow's down. So I need another dot. Well, Y-intercept. Y-intercept is a good one because it's pretty easy to figure out because you just plug in 0. So I'm going to plug in 0 for the y-intercept. It's going to be 0 comma something. 0, 0. You can literally type that in just like that on Delta Math's calculator with parentheses and exponents and everything, and it'll do it for you. Or you can just do it in your head. A lot of you can do it in your head. 0 squared is 0. Times -1 is 0. -2 times 0 is 0. So the only thing left is +3. Okay. Hmm?
So even though the 3 and the 4 are positive, you still have to connect them with
The 3 and the
dot
4.
line, right?
Yeah. So this is a dot. I go left 1, up 4. I don't go anywhere left or right. I just go up 3. Yeah. Question? Yeah. No. That was my next one. Yeah. So where's the other dot going to be? Exactly in the same spot, opposite side. Right there. There you go. Does this guy have a max or min? Max. This one has a maximum. At, where's the max? At 4. Yeah. The top is 4. Good. One is arrows up, one is arrows down. So when is it going to be arrows up and when is it going to be arrows down? Well, I wrote a little note to myself here. A has 2 jobs. First thing A does is tell whether it's arrows up or arrows down. So if A is positive, you're always going to have a parabola with arrows up. If A is negative, you're always going to have a parabola with arrows down. So just by looking at something, look at number 3. Is that one going to be arrows up or arrows down? Arrows down because A is -2, right, for the last one? So you can already tell whether you're going to have a maximum or minimum just by looking at A. Okay? So when A is positive, you're going to have arrows pointing up like we did on number 1. A was +1. When A is negative, you're going to have arrows pointing down like we did on this one. Always. Okay? All right, so let's look at number 3. Same thing, we got to find the same things, just a different equation. So first thing, A, B, C. A is -2, so we know it's going to be arrows down. B is -8. C is -5. Okay. -1 times B on top, 2 times A on the bottom. Oops. +8 over 4. Nope, -4, sorry. -4, bottom's -4. Which makes -2. Axis of symmetry is at -2. So that's where I'm going to draw my line. Okay. The vertex always starts with the axis of symmetry. So it's going to be -2 comma something. Always starts with the axis of symmetry. So how do I get y? You plug in -2. So like I said, on Delta Math, you can literally plug that in with parentheses and everything, and it'll give you the answer. Or you can do it in your head. Either one, it's okay. So -2 squared is 4, times -2 is -8. -8 times -2 is +16, so +16 minus 5. So I get 8 minus 5, which is +3. That's where my red dot goes. Up 3. Negative to left 2, up 3. Okay. Now I need another dot. I'm going to use the y-intercept. So how do I get the y-intercept? Plug in 0 for x. Always, always, always. Doesn't matter what chapter it is, doesn't matter what class it is, math 1, math 2, math 3, whatever, doesn't matter. Even in calculus, that's how we find the y-intercept. Just plug in 0 for x. So everything cancels out, nice and neat. 0 minus 5, we get -5. So down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's going to mirror on the green line. So it's going to have another dot in the same spot on the other side. Is this going to have a minimum or maximum? Maximum. At +3. At +3. Yeah. Yeah. There it is. Yep. Every time arrows are going down, you're going to have a maximum. Every time arrows are going up, you're going to have a minimum. You're never going to have both. Yeah, for quadratics in this chapter, you will never have both maximum and minimums. You'll only have one or the other. Okay? Here's my question. Pretty easy to tell what's the same, right? Between these two pictures right here. They're both arrows down. They're both going in the same direction. Here's my question. Here's a little harder question. What's different? Axis symmetry is different.
One's bigger than the other,
One's what?
like wider than the other.
Yeah, one is a little bit wider. Which one's a little bit wider? This guy's a little bit wider, right? The guy on the right's a little bit skinnier. Why? What's causing that? That's A's second job.
I think that's causing us one is closer to the other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Notice where the blue dots are. The blue dots are really close for the left, but for the right, they're spread apart. Why is that causing it? Because that's A's other job. A's other job is to determine wide or skinny. Wide or skinny. So A's job, number one, is it arrows up or arrows down? A's second job is to decide narrow or wide. So this one had a bigger A, right? 2 is bigger than 1. So it was a little narrower. So as A gets bigger, further away from 0, the graph is going to get more narrow. So let's say A was negative 10 on this one. It would be even skinnier. As A gets bigger, it gets skinnier and skinnier. How do I make it wider? That's how it gets skinnier. So more negative, it will get skinny. So negative 10, negative 12, negative 13, get skinny, skinny, skinny. How do I make it wider? Not positives. Smaller numbers. What are smaller numbers? Decimals, fractions, right? Decimals, fractions. Let me show you. I did this problem already, so you know. This is what you're going to see tomorrow. They're going to give you 3 graphs, and they're going to want you to put them in the correct order. So there's only one positive, right? This guy in the middle is positive, arrows up, so that one matches that one, right? These two here are both negative. So why is one wider and one skinnier? The bigger number, negative 4, is skinnier than the decimal. So how do you get wide? Decimals. How do you get skinny? Make it further away from 0. Okay, watch. I'll give you another one like that. There's one positive, arrows up. That one's already done. These two here, one is skinny and one's wide. So the skinny one is going to go with negative 4. The wide one is going to, so it's already, that one's already done. You didn't have to move or anything. Let me give you another one. That one's already done too. Why are these already done? Oh, here we go. Arrows up are going to go here and here. Arrows down is going to go this. So that one's already done. Are these two in the same right spot? The wider goes the decimal. The skinnier goes 4. So that one is what I want. Yep, just match them. That's one of the things you're going to do tomorrow. Okay. All right, so I'm going to skip. So go to page 10 in your notebook. I want to skip 4 and 5 for right now. I want to give you a practice problem. So in your notebook, on page 10, do number 6. You don't have to graph it. Don't have to graph it. I just want you to do number 6 in your notes. So that's the one I want you to do. This equation, I want you to find 4 things. What's the axis of symmetry? What's the vertex? What's the y-intercept? And is it a maximum or minimum? And what is that number? So on page 10 where you're going to tape. We'll do number 4 and 5 in a second, but I want to do a practice problem like this. So tell me those 4 things. You don't have to graph it. I'm not asking you to graph it. I'm just asking you to find those things. Those are the most important things. If you can tell me those things, I can graph it pretty easily. That's the thing about graphing. Graphing's the easy part, but you got to know enough about it. So I want you to tell me those 4 things about that guy there. So the first thing you're going to do is what is A, what is B, what is C? A is 1, B is negative 6. C is positive 5. Okay. Plug them into your formula. Negative 1 times B divided by 2 times A. So negative 1 times negative 6 divided by 2 times 1, which when you do the math, you get positive 3. That's the first part of my vertex. So then I plugged in, why did I plug in negative 3? Should have plugged in positive 3. Oops. So when I plug in positive 3, 9 minus 18, I get 9 minus 18, negative 9, negative 4. Negative 4. Okay. The y-intercept, plug in 0 for x. That leaves 5. A is positive, so it's arrows up, minimum. The minimum is going to be negative 4. Okay. Did you do something wrong?
The y-intercept always what C is?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I wasn't going to put it up there unless someone said it. But yeah, so here's a hint. You could thank Ava for this because I wasn't going to tell you guys this, but it's actually easier. It's actually C. It's going to be C every time. So you don't even need to plug it in. It's just going to be C. Whatever C is, that's going to be your y-intercept. So whatever C is, that's C's job. That's the only thing C does, is it's the y-intercept. So you don't even got to do the math. It's just going to be whatever C is, 5. Yeah, I didn't tell my last class that because no one said anything. So let them do the math. But if you guys can pick up on it, you don't have to do that. It saves you time. Okay. Right. Okay, so one more thing. So 4 and 5 won't take us very long, but that's the big thing here. This is the big thing here. Be able to do these things. This is when we have a test or a quiz on this, this is exactly what I'm going to ask you. I'm going to give you something like that, and I'm going to say, tell me what the axis of symmetry is. Tell me what the vertex is. Tell me what the y-intercept is. Tell me what the maximum or minimum are. Is it a maximum? Is it a minimum? If you can do those things, it's the test and the quiz is going to be simple. That's what we're going to practice tomorrow, right? We haven't practiced yet, so we're going to practice this tomorrow. Okay? All right. Okay, so let me go up here real quick. 4 and 5. So 4 and 5, we just have to put in standard form. They're not in standard form. Right now, I don't know what A is. Look at number 4. What is A? Is it 7? Is it 5? I don't know what it is. So I have to put them together. Like what we did last semester, last chapter. Subtract 5x squared from both sides. To move to the other side, I have to do the opposite. Now I know A is 2, B is 6, C is negative 4. Before I didn't know. I knew what B and C were, but I didn't know what A was. It could have been 7, it could have been 5. Now I know it's actually 2. That's it, yeah. What is A? What is B? What is C? Like for number 5, do you know what A is? Do you know what B is? Do you know what C is? Some of them I do, some of them I don't. A, is it 2? Is it 4? I don't know. So let's get those guys together. Subtract 2x squared from both sides. positive 2x squared. Bring down everything I haven't used. Okay, now they have to be on the same side of the blue line. For me to say that's A, that's B, that's C, everything has to be on the same side of the blue line. 9 is not. So I got to do the opposite. I got to subtract 9 from both sides. And I have to put them in the right order. A has to come first. So 2x squared. B has to come second. C has to come last. Now, do you know what A is, B is, and C is? Are they all on the same side? Yes. Then you're done. Then you're done. Sometimes we have to do that, sometimes we don't. But if you do have to do it, then you do it.
Does it matter which side you put the 0
No.
on? Or
So great question, great question. So if I put everything on the other side of the blue line, you would have gotten A is -2, B is positive 1, and C is positive 9. It would have been the same answer. You would have got the same graph.
okay.
Yeah. In math, it's weird that way. In math, if everything is the same or everything is completely opposite, it's actually the same, right? Let me see, where's my other one? Is there another piece of tape dispenser? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Should be another tape dispenser and you're floating around somewhere. Yeah, tape's coming back. Oh, there's one right there. So there's 2 right here, 1 right here. Where is it? Where is the tape?